The 2020 census will keep going till the end of the month. A federal judge saying that a shorter timeline would likely produce inaccurate results. But census workers are still concerned about getting a complete count. They're not allowed to talk to the media. So here's what some of them anonymously told NBC News correspondent Joe Fryer.
I think we're a massive risk for an undercount, and from what I saw and the enumerators that I was able to bump into and talk to when I was on the street, because there were just a lot of us running around at one point, everyone was worried. There wasn't a single person who was confident about it.
Like so many things in 2020, the census is not going according to plan. Had 2020 been a normal year with no coronavirus, the count would have wrapped up July 31st. Since the pandemic hit, that deadline has shifted.
The administration has suddenly just announced that they're not only going to not take that extra time they asked for, they're actually going to wrap up the whole census thing early.
And shifted again.
The 2020 census will continue through October.
It was incredibly disorganized. You know, like it's hard to overstate how disorganized it was. This is easily the most disorganized job I've ever worked in my entire career.
In a statement, 4 former Census Bureau directors said the shortened deadline will result in seriously incomplete enumerations in many areas across our country. And an internal Census Bureau document sent to members of Congress and obtained by NBC News warned the tighter timeline could lead to serious errors. But it's not just the tighter and shifting timeline that concerns the people on the ground.
Children under the age of 5 and men of African descent are among the least counted.
We've reported on undercounts that might occur due to climate events like hurricanes and wildfires. We've also highlighted how the Census Bureau has hired fewer people this year than a decade ago. In addition, census enumerators who work this year tell NBC News that fear in immigrant communities, inadequate training, and technological problems could impact their ability to get a full count.
I had to say, no. You know, I'm not a police officer. I have no authority. I'm not interested in your citizenship. But that didn't stop a lot of people from not answering.
In 2019, the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration from adding a citizenship question to this year's census. Still, some enumerators told us they would encounter people who were afraid to answer the questions, worried they would be asked about their citizenship.
Anytime someone from the Hispanic community, when I knocked on their door, they would just say, "Oh, I mailed it in." I'm sorry. They were very friendly. They were very polite. All said the same thing. I've already mailed it in. Would finally just say, just tell me the total number of people are in your house. I don't want to know names. I don't want to know birth dates. Just tell me how many people, how many souls are living in your house, so that I at least had some kind of data to enter into the phone.
What have you been doing to try and communicate, educate with the immigrant community and make sure they get counted?
Well, we've actively been working with literally thousands and thousands of local organizations that have become our census partners. The census is safe. It's confidential.
Tim Olson is the Census Bureau's Associate Director for Field Operations.
There's always been a challenge within the immigrant community worried about confidentiality. It's more heightened than it has been in the past.
Several enumerators also told NBC News they felt they did not receive adequate training to navigate their jobs during a pandemic. One of their biggest challenges, troubleshooting problems with the census-issued smartphones used to collect data during their door-to-door visits.
When I was operating it felt very much like a prototype. It was buggy. It would disconnect often, sometimes in the middle of an interview.
Because the app was so complicated, and oftentimes it would just, if you were in an area where the cell coverage wasn't decent, the connection would just drop and you had no way it wouldn't even let you enter the data.
Olson told us there was a glitch in extremely rural areas which was solved.
Not one single minute have those systems gone down or failed.
Overall, he said the technology worked well and insisted there were no system-wide difficulties with 435,000 smartphones out in the field.
We're actually pretty pleased at how successful those instruments and the technology behind them have been.
But even Tim Olson was concerned about how the deadline would affect the count. The Associated Press reported that earlier this year, Olson said in an email to colleagues it was ludicrous to believe a full count could be completed before October 31st.
Come January, they should just do it over, or after the vaccine comes out. And people will be less reticent to answer the door. Just scrap all this possibly crappy information that's been compiled and start over.
NBC News correspondent Joe Fryer joining me now. Joe, the Trump administration fighting the federal judge's ruling. Why do they want to wrap this up sooner?
Well, an attorney for the Trump administration was actually before appellate judges today arguing this needs to end as soon as possible. Why? Well, their main argument is that all that information they've been counting, it needs to be processed and needs to be turned over by the end of the year, December 31st. They say that's a congressionally mandated deadline, and they can't process all that information in just 2 months. Now, the deadline has changed a few times, but over the summer, the Trump administration settled on ending the counting on September 30th. But a federal judge struck that down, said no, keep counting until October 31st. She was worried about an accurate count. Well, then the Commerce Department just set a deadline for October 5th. That's today. Once again, a judge struck that down. So now the Trump administration has appealed. They were before an appellate court today and argued that the census shouldn't be subject to, quote, judicial second guessing. On the flip side, you have some cities and civil rights groups. They're the ones that filed a lawsuit saying the count needs to take longer. They're worried that a shorter count impacts underrepresented communities, including communities of color. There's a lot at stake, including federal funding and congressional seats. This is something that the appellate court plans to deal with very quickly with a ruling soon, and it could then possibly end up before the U.S. Supreme Court. Allison?
Oh, Joe, it seems like this back and forth about the census never ends. Thank you so much for bringing us the latest.
Yep.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.